Thank you.
Okay. All right, we're going to cover Revelation 9, the whole chapter. We got enough time. At any rate, the whole idea behind this was that everything I'm going to tell you today, almost pretty much everything, I found in a book that was written back in the 50s. But a few years back, I was kind of interested in more about Revelation 9 and what the locusts were and all this kind of thing. So I went to the Christian bookstore and I bought all the books. There was about 10 good books probably on Revelation. And I went through all of them, and none of them really explained what the locusts were. So I got on the web and started looking around. I found information, but then I ran across this book and I bought it. And now I can't figure out which one it is. I've got so many books at home. The one I thought it was, I grabbed and it wasn't that one. So no point in even discussing that until I find it. But we'll just read through it, and I'm going to do some stick drawings up here, and hopefully you'll figure this out real quick. Just go ahead and start with the first verse.
Verse 1?
Yeah.
And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth.
Oh,
And
okay.
to him was given the key of the bottomless pit.
All right. Well, there's our star. Some of them say the fifth trumpet, because of the trumpets, which start back in chapter 8. So here's my trumpet. There's my earth, and there's my star. Go ahead.
And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit.
All right, some of them say sun and moon. So here's my sun and my moon, and they're darkened from the smoke, right? So apparently when the star hits, you got smoke that goes up and darkens everything, right? So if we were to see a star fall today, and then all this smoke come up, so much smoke that you couldn't see the sun or the moon, what would be your first thought?
Asteroid hit the Earth.
Yeah, maybe.
Volcano.
Meteor hit the earth.
Meteor or volcano, except there was a loud noise, which an asteroid would do, or a meteorite, or whatever. Yeah, sure. Continue.
And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power.
Okay. Locusts, which are like scorpions. Continue.
And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads.
Okay. So where does the locusts come from?
Out of the earth.
Anybody can participate.
Out of the earth.
If they have an idea.
Out of the smoke?
Out of the smoke. So, okay, the locusts came from here. Continue on.
Okay. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man.
Okay. And who are they tormenting?
Unbelievers.
Well, it doesn't say it. What does it say?
The ones that don't have the seal on them?
Okay, so we got people with seals or marks that identify them, apparently. And these locusts are going to be able to see everybody and decide who has a mark and who doesn't. Okay.
And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them.
All right, so when they're tormented, here's a key thing. When they're tormented, they're not going to die. So it's not like we're going to shoot them and kill them, right? Or something like that. Continue.
And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle.
Okay. Has somebody got an alternate reading on that one?
Better have. I thought this was King. I'm sorry.
It is.
This is study.
Anybody else got an alternate reading on that? What he just said there? Which verse was that?
7.
7.
Verse 7.
Revelation 9.
Has anybody got an alternate rating on 7 in their Bibles?
Another translation.
I've
Or
got
one
the
that just
Amplified
reads
here.
slightly different? Go ahead.
The lotuses resembled horses equipped for battle. On their heads was something like golden crowns. Their faces resembled
Alright,
the
hold on.
faces of people.
Horses, golden crowns. Okay.
Their faces resembled the faces of people.
Or men, yeah. Okay. All right, so let's start with the locust. Here's my locust. Okay, here's my locust. Now you look up a locust, everybody kind of knows what a locust is. Except this locust is different. Instead of having legs, it tells you what this locust has. So this locust has a golden crown. Okay. It has a face like a man, or men. A happy face. Whatever. What's next? Let him finish.
And they had hair as the hair of women,
Okay. It has hair.
and their teeth were as the teeth of lions.
Alright. Now back up, we missed something. It has tail of a scorpion, right? Tail of a scorpion. Alright. Well, that's a little curly cute thing.
Oh, that's in verse 10.
Yeah, that's down
Yeah.
farther.
Okay.
And should I just keep going?
Just keep going.
And they had breastplates as it were, breastplates of iron.
Yeah, breastplates are like, in other words, it's made out of metal.
And the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle.
Okay. Chariots. That's what it sounds like.
And they had tails like unto scorpions,
Okay.
and there were stings in their tails.
Okay.
And their power was to hurt men 5 months.
Okay, all right. All right, so there's our description of a locust. Okay. But it had teeth on it, right? So here's
Like a
my
lion.
teeth. Does anybody know what the locust is yet? It's a helicopter, of course. But 2,000, 3,000 years ago, how do you describe a helicopter? When you have absolutely no idea what a helicopter is. Or you might have seen a meteorite or whatever, but
Where's the
how do you
hair?
describe it? Exactly, where's the hair? Okay. First of all, we got to realize that's a helicopter. So what we're talking about here actually is war. Helicopters came from right after this thing hit. If a meteorite hit, it's unlikely that you would have helicopters come from there, right? Where do helicopters come from? Exactly. There's only basically 2 places helicopters come from. They either come off a ship or they come from the ground on a base, which could be a military base or in the middle of a war. It could be wherever they are at that time. Now, what he's describing is his view of this helicopter from different angles. The golden crown. What's the golden crown? The golden crown, he's seeing the helicopter from the top. And if you look at any videos of a helicopter when the sun's out, bouncing off those rotors, it looks like gold, like fleckled gold is what it looks like when you're looking at it from the top. When you look at it from the front, he sees the 2 men sitting there in the front. Okay, he tells you it's made out of metal. The scorpion tail is the tail rotor. He doesn't know how else to describe it. Okay, we're going to get to the stings here in a minute. The teeth, of course, are the skids that it lands on. He uses teeth. What else would he say? Whiskers? Okay. So what were their other descriptions? They sounded like chariots. What do helicopters, a whole bunch of helicopters in the middle of a war, sound like? They sound like chariots coming to battle. Okay, so all those descriptions fit. There's a few things that are kind of weird though. What do helicopters normally do in war? They shoot bullets or they shoot rockets or something like that. The problem is these helicopters don't do that. Now, how many of you ever been in a war with helicopters? Any ex-military here? Actually been in a war where they had helicopters? Okay, when do helicopters do something other than shoot bullets or shoot rockets?
Take people back.
Yeah.
Okay, but they're tormenting men. These helicopters are tormenting men for 5 months. So when do helicopters do something to torment people for 5 months without killing them.
Fly over at night.
Gas, man.
Something like gas
Okay.
or ancient.
What two things do you have?
Agent Orange
You
or
have
something.
chemical
Gas
weapons,
and fire.
and you have biological weapons. And you have fire, but it can't be fire, they'd be killing them. But it could be gas, like CS gas or mustard gas or whatever you want to call it, or it could be biological weapons. The problem with biological weapons is it's going to kill them. That's the whole purpose of biologicals. It might not kill them today, but it's going to kill them within a week. There's no way you're going to drop biological weapons on somebody and torment them for 5 months. So that puts it back to chemical weapons. Okay? When do helicopters release chemical weapons?
They've been
That's-
known to spray for mosquitoes.
They've been known to spray for mosquitoes, and helicopters have been outfitted to spray chemical weapons. However, when do you actually do that in a war? If you're at war, when do you spray chemical weapons? Okay, you got to think about this.
When they defoliated the timbers over in Vietnam,
Agent
they
Orange.
sprayed the Agent Orange.
Okay.
But if you're gonna do a chemical attack on somebody, you'd have to do a surprise attack.
Well, first of all, you've got this, what was the description? It was a bottomless pit. What do we use that description to mean? You know, everybody's probably used that description at one time or another. What do you use that to mean, that bottomless pit thought? When you use that in a sentence, what do you mean? You mean that something is continually happening over and over and over. Usually you talk about people eating, but you know, the whole idea is that, you know, it's just going on and on and on.
Endless.
If he's endless, but if he's what he's watching is something happen for 5 months, people being tormented. Okay, they're being tormented with gas. The reason he calls it a bottomless pit is because he's seeing these helicopters from the different angles, and he sees this continually happening for 5 months. And what does that look like? If you're standing there watching helicopters come and drop gas, what do? They go back. And then they refuel, and then they come back in the same helicopters, and they just go around in a circle, basically. So it looks like a bottomless pit, because that would be a perfect description. They're just continually going on for 5 months. What else would you use? A bottomless pit, you see? So that's where that description came from. However, helicopters don't do that. Helicopters shoot bullets and rockets in a time of a war, unless we don't have any bullets and rockets. Unless you're so far advanced in the war at this point. In fact, if you look back, go back to chapter 8, verse 6. Read chapter 8, verse 6.
And the 7 angels, which had the 7 trumpets, prepared themselves to sound.
Okay, so this is the first trumpet. Go ahead.
The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood.
All right, that's good enough. Hail, fire. That's actually hail mixed with blood. Okay, that's what it is. And fire, or a great heat, or an intense heat. Some of them say slightly different.
Okay.
Okay, that's the first trumpet. Now, when do we ever see hail mixed with blood and intense heat? Number one, you don't have intense heat and hail together. Does anybody know except the one exception to that? We knew the answer to this in 1944 when the first atomic bomb was dropped. If anybody looks back and go to the wiki and start reading up on atomic testing that was done originally, and what you'll find out is they used to have Army guys and they just set them out there to see what the effects of the radiation was going to be, except that the first time they did that, they all got killed. It wasn't from radiation, it was a hailstorm. And they had no idea that when they set this bomb off, it was going to create this giant hail, basketball-sized hail. And they didn't have an explanation for it. So later on, they moved the guys back a little bit. But the first time they did it, they killed them all with a hailstorm of basketball-sized hail. Okay, well, or softball, you know, but it varied. And then they figured out, you know, when you shoot these things off, it does something in the atmosphere and it produces the hail, and I don't have the explanation for that, but you can go read up on it if you want to. So that's what happened. So when you have hail mixed with blood, it's when you drop the atom bomb on a city. Okay? Then you have blood going up in the air, produces the hail, it falls back down, and you have the intense heat of the atom bomb and great destruction. There's where your war started. Okay? So between verse 6 on the first trumpet and over here in Revelation 9, when we got helicopters flying around burning fuel, but they don't have any rockets anymore because they've already used them by that time. So they're just flying around. The only thing they've got left is chemical weapons. Isn't that when you use chemical weapons, when you don't have anything else and that's about all you got left? Or you could use biologicals. But the chemical weapon fits. It said you don't burn the green grass and hurt the trees and all that stuff. So then the chemical weapons wouldn't do any of those things. You see? Okay. Now, more than likely, when the star hit, it wasn't a star. He was looking at a missile. And it wasn't a meteorite, because that's one of the other ones. Continue on and we'll find the meteorite.
You see, the mingle with blood, they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up.
Okay, that's what would happen if you had an atom bomb, yeah.
Second,
But not just one atom bomb, more than likely. But that was the beginning of a war. You don't usually just shoot one atom bomb, right? A war, you start shooting multiple ones off at a time. But that was the first one, more than likely. So continue.
and the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into
Okay,
the
a
sea.
mountain. Now, you know, if it was something else, he would have just said it was a star. Now he says this one is a mountain. Star and a mountain are two totally different things. So now I think it's when he sees this meteorite fall and hit, and where does it land?
Into the ocean.
Okay, it lands in the ocean, and what happens?
And a third part of the sea became blood.
Okay.
And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. And the third part of the ships were destroyed.
Okay, so here you go. You got a meteorite land in the water and produces a huge tsunami and wipes out a third of the ships. Now, it really doesn't say necessarily that's a third of the ships worldwide. If you had a meteorite land out in the Pacific, it would do damage to England, America, and everything on those coastlines, but it wouldn't necessarily hurt anybody over in China, you see. Yeah. But you probably had a meteorite fall, which looked like a big rock, and then it killed a bunch of animals, sea creatures, and it produced a tsunami and wiped out a third of the boats on those shores that it affected, which I think is what it's really saying. Continue.
The third trump, and the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of water.
Okay.
And the name of the star is called Wormwood.
All right, wormwood. Does anybody know what wormwood is? You can look it up on the internet and you can find a lot of different things. But one thing I found that was interesting on wormwood is the Russian word for wormwood is Chernobyl. Yeah, the Russian word. So there's other speculation. I'm sure Bill's even studied that word before, and there's a lot of people have different ideas. However, if it's Chernobyl, if that's what it really means, it means radiation. So maybe that was a continuation of our atomic war, which is probably World War III by now. And why would the missile land in the ocean? That would be the question. There's nothing out in the ocean you're trying to hit with an atom bomb, is there? No.
Submarines?
However, everybody knows we got Star Wars defense, missile defense, stuff like that. Could be, but they shot the missile. It was a multi-warhead, and it got shot down. It still exploded. It just ended up in the ocean instead of over here on your land somewhere. And it did a lot of damage because if it was had 10 warheads and they all went off in various areas, it's going to kill a lot of fish, kill a lot of animals, and it was going to destroy the water, pollute the water with Chernobyl, which is radiation. So that's just a possibility. All right, go ahead.
And the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter.
Yeah. Well, that sounds more like drinking water because no one drinks seawater. Okay, but if you got radiation spread out, you're just going to get in your water, and you're going to drink it. The worst thing about radiation really is, and especially right now with Japan, is it turns into like a dust, And when it comes down out of the atmosphere, if you breathe in even a very small amount of radiation, if it gets in your lung, it just sits there and radiates you and it causes cancer. You can take a radiation blast 100 times more on the outside of your body than you can getting radiation inside your body. Once it's in your lungs, and the reason is because it just sits there constantly and radiates you and it causes cancer, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't get it back out of your lung. Okay? Go ahead.
And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened.
All right, third part of the stars. Now here's an interesting thing. First of all, we were just covering up the moon and the sun, and now we're covering all of that. So I would say it's a continuation of the atomic war. That's exactly what it sounds like. Another missile hit, and now the war is spreading out. So by this time, people are shooting off bullets and rockets and everything with their helicopters. But later on, you get the helicopters that are shooting gas because they don't have any ammunition left. They're out. That's all they got. Go ahead.
Okay. So as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise.
Okay.
And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of the heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels, which are yet to sound.
Okay. Well, let's go back to where we started, Revelation 9. Now, one of the things it mentioned was about these men having marks on them. And the helicopters were not going to mess with the men that had the marks on them. Only the men that didn't have the marks. Or was it the opposite? At any rate, when you're in the middle of a war, how do you look at all these people out here you're flying over and decide which ones you're going to drop these chemical weapons on? How do you decide who you're going to shoot? Let's put it this way. If you're in a helicopter and you come across and you're going to shoot your machine gun or your rockets or whatever you got, how do you decide who you're going to hit, what's friendly fire and what's not? How do you decide that? Normal.
Uniforms, normal.
Uniforms, what their
Insignias.
hat, the insignias, yeah. So if you have a UN cap on, well, that might be a guy you want to miss. Maybe that's not the bad guy. If you have a Chinese uniform, maybe that's who you're trying to hit at. Well, yeah, it's how they're dressed. Everybody wants to dress so they'll be recognized. They don't want friendly fire. One of the biggest things in war is, the worst things you can do is have friendly fire and end up killing your own guys. So most of your war is about knowing where your guys are, where the enemy is, and only shooting those as best you can. Yeah, and you're still going to have some casualties, but you try to avoid it. Okay, let's pick back up where we were on 9, Revelation 9. I think you dropped off on about...
Around 10?
11.
I'm starting
11.
with 11, okay.
Okay.
And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon.
All right, if you look at, what is that in the Amplified, Marie?
Which one?
11.
Verse 11.
Okay. Over them as king, they have the angels of the abyss, of the bottomless pit.
Right.
In Hebrew, his name is Abaddon,
Abaddon.
destruction. But
Destruction.
in Greek, he is called Apollyon, destroyer.
Destroyed. Okay. Now let's get back to this idea of where the helicopters came from and what the hair was. Okay. He sees these helicopters from different angles. Okay. When do you see a helicopter with hair on it? What does hair do? Anybody that's got hair? I got hair. Okay. What's hair do? It covers your head. Otherwise, you'd see your head, right? So, what is hair on a helicopter?
I think it's camouflage.
Camouflage. Actually, you know, a lot of people don't get that. It's camouflage.
I didn't get it until you kind of...
Exactly. So when you describe it and think about what hair is, okay, it's obvious if you're describing a helicopter. So what he's saying is, he sees helicopters when they're sitting there and they're covered with camouflage. All right, but you don't cover them with camouflage when they're on a ship, right? If they're on a ship, do you ever camouflage helicopters? No, you don't need to. Okay. But you're in the middle of a war, so you can bet that there's going to be aircraft carriers. There's going to be helicopters coming from there, and you're going to have them over here on land because you're probably going to fly them off the aircraft carrier and fly them over to the land. So when you send an aircraft carrier out, what goes with it? I don't know if you know this, but every aircraft carrier that we have, when it's just sitting at the dock, it's costing us $250,000 a day just to sit there. Nothing else. No bombs, no nothing. Just to sit at that dock, it costs us $250,000 a day. Once it goes out into the, out into the water, it's more like about $2.5 million a day. And when you start consuming bullets and the fuel and all the other things, it can easily go up to $20–30 million a day in cost. When you start shooting rockets off, because those things cost a lot of money. So once you get in the middle of a war and you actually start shooting things, the cost goes up astronomically. Yeah. Okay. But what goes out when you send the aircraft carrier out? Anybody ever been in the Navy?
A destroyer.
Destroyers.
You have all these other ships. They don't go out by themselves.
Exactly. They don't go out by themselves. They go out with a whole armada of a minimum of 4 destroyers go with every aircraft carrier at the 4 corners, front and back, and usually on the sides as well. So usually you have 6, but a minimum, it does not leave the dock without 4 destroyers, minimum, ever. Plus it goes with fueling ships and other ships that support it, and usually they put the munitions on a separate ship and carry those and then transfer those out in the water and things like that. Because you want to protect that aircraft carrier. It's a lot of money. It's got all those planes, which are also worth billions of dollars a piece sometimes, or at least millions. So destroyers. So that's one option for the king, or whatever it's called, the angel of the abyss, being destruction or destroyer. But I thought about that, and because I read that somewhere, and I thought, I looked up the Apollyon and the Abaddon, and one of the things that it indicates is the god Apollo, which is I guess a Greek god. And if you look at the images of that, it's a man pulling an arrow, shooting an arrow. Now, here's a thought that I had an epiphany when I saw that. I thought, if you're shooting an arrow, what is that? It's probably like the god of war. If you're shooting an arrow, what's the intended purpose? If you're shooting arrows and you never hit anybody with those arrows, it would be useless, right? So the whole point of it is that if you've got an arrow, bow and arrow, you do practice. But in the military, you don't practice like that. What do? You have a whole military-industrial complex, which we have here in the United States and other countries, and their whole purpose is to design weapons that hit the target, starting with a rifle all the way up to the most expensive plane or weapon that we have. Even if it's a Star Wars weapon, their whole idea of the military-industrial complex is to destroy the target. Accuracy. That's kind of the same thing as what it's saying. The gods of destruction. It wouldn't be destruction if you didn't hit the target. Okay? So, the first thing it started out with there is that this angel was given this king, was given the key to the abyss, right? And then over in, towards the end, it tells you, they had over them a king, the angel of the abyss. Okay? Those are just terms. That clock's not
That's
working.
not any, no, it is about 22.
Okay. So I got
10 minutes.
10 minutes. All right, good. The angel of the abyss. The idea to me is who controls the angel of the abyss? Who is the king? Okay? So in our country, for example, who controls the military?
President.
The president. Okay. And how does he start a nuclear war?
He's got a little red button.
He's got a little red button, and where's the little red button at? When he's on the road, where's the red button at?
In a briefcase?
It's in a briefcase, and they call the briefcase a football. That's what they call it, because you've got all these Secret Service agents protecting that football, and they pass it from one to the other, and they actually have multiple cases, and they pass them around so no one knows exactly who's got the case, except the guy that's got it. So that's the whole idea. And it takes 2 people to push the button, not just one. You got to have two, okay? But still, you've got two heads of your military at whatever level is alive at that particular moment, which would be the president and maybe the Secretary of State if they were available. If not, it can pass on down the line. So they're given a key, which for the football is a code. They put in a code, and that's how they activate the button, which starts the war. So the key to the abyss could be basically the code to start the war, because it is a war, and it's a nuclear war, so that's what it takes to start it. I mean, that's just common sense if you start putting 2 and 2 together. All right, let's see what else we missed. Is there anything else we missed that somebody was thinking about that I haven't answered their question already? No questions at all?
Is that only President of United States can start the war?
Okay, if we go a little bit farther, we find, we just don't have enough time to read through all that, but down near the end there somewhere, it talks about how many people were going to be involved in the war, and it lists 200 million people were going to be in this war. Frankly, that's not America, or at least that's not who it's referring to at that point. The only nation on earth right now that can field 200 million people is China. They're it. No one else can put that many people on the ground. So for sure China's involved in the war, but there's obviously got to be another side to it and other people. Apparently, this one group, because if you keep reading through 13 and on to the end, it talks about rivers and so forth. Here's another one though. Let's drop on down to 17 and start on that one since I'm limited time. Go ahead.
And thus I saw the horses in the vision.
All right, horses. Okay.
It says horses and riders.
All right,
And
horses.
them that sat on them,
All right, riders. Okay.
having breastplates of fire
Breastplates of fire,
Fire and red.
red,
and of jacinth and brimstone.
brimstone. Okay.
And
And mine says sulfur.
It says dark blue and yellow like it's sulfur.
Blue and yellow. Okay. Okay.
and
And
the heads, you want me to keep going?
well, what is that? All right, we know we're in a war,
Right.
and it describes them as heads and tails. Okay. So what has heads and tails and spews smoke, sulfur? Well, sulfur is part of gunpowder, right? Okay. So when you see, for example, guns, big guns go off on a destroyer, what does that look like? Yeah. Sulfur, red, blue, flame, sulfur, exactly. And the heads and the tails then would be only certain types of ships are going to have heads and tails that shoot guns forward and guns backwards. Not all of them shoot forward and backwards. Some of them only shoot in with a turret, and they have very limited capability. Destroyers shoot forward, backwards, sideways, and everything. You see.
Does
So-
it say tails?
It does say tails on mine. From their
It
mouths.
says it in 19.
For the power of the horses is in their mouths and in their tails. Okay, so there's their tails. And here again it describes them like serpents possessing heads and all that. Well, all he's describing is probably a destroyer or other ships that would go out. So for sure we have people on the ground. We got 200 million troops on the ground. We also have ships. We have an atom bombs or multiple atom bombs and maybe a meteorite thrown in there as well. So you're describing World War III. That's the whole idea here. We're in a war. It started in chapter 8, verse 6, approximately. And that's where the next World War started. Now, this isn't spread out over 100 years. This is a war that started here, and we've only gone, maybe we might be a year into the war or whatever. Who knows? I didn't really put a timeline to it. But this is a nuclear war, and that's what it's describing. And those heads and tails, those are warships, which are probably destroyers because destroyers go with the others. And it mentions the 4 angels held captive beside the great river Euphrates. That was verse 14. So where is that at? Okay, we're talking Middle East. Okay, so we're talking China, we're talking aircraft carriers, Middle East. Okay, so you get the idea. So there it basically tells you all that stuff. A third of mankind's going to die. You got various numbers that are going to die. Okay.
Is the ones with the mark the Jews?
The ones with the mark.
Are they the Jews? Since the war's in the Middle East.
Okay, let's go back to the mark. Where was the mark?
It was near the very beginning.
First part of 9.
It's at 4. I think it starts at 4.
Only those men who have not the mark of God upon their foreheads. Okay. So, if it doesn't want to kill the people that have the mark of God upon their foreheads, then what would that be? Wouldn't those be Christian people?
Well, if it's in the Middle East and the war is China and it's all taking place in the Middle East, I would say that the war, the battle is the one is around Israel, and Israel is the ones with the mark.
Well,
That
maybe.
God's protecting them from the battle.
I think it's anybody who belongs to God.
Anybody who belongs to God. Exactly.
But that seems to take place. In
I know we place a lot of importance on Israel, but the way I look at it is the people that claim Jesus Christ are the ones that belong to God. And we all know, or maybe we don't, but a lot of Jews are atheists. A lot of them don't believe in God, and they don't.
But there's Christian Jews too.
Well, so this, I'm saying,
Yeah.
a lot of them, the majority of them, actually don't believe in our God. They preach other things. In fact, that's the biggest contention between Christians and Jews is the fact that they don't have Jesus. Right? So I don't think he would protect people that don't have Jesus, but like you say, if they believe in Jesus, then that would probably be the people that have the mark. The people that are calling on God's name are probably the ones that are going to have the mark or the protection of
But
God.
it seems the battle is in that area though.
Yeah, but a nuclear war, I mean, they can shoot those 7,000 miles. So we could have rockets headed this way. Maybe the one that fell in the water was coming this way and it got shot down. That's like I said, and that's why it ended up in the water.
Is that a divine
See?
protection, or is that
Well, of course.
actual?
There would be a divine protection
Yeah.
to people that call on God's name, regardless of where they are. Although, if you're right in the middle of the war, that would be pretty scary. Any Christians that were in the middle of the war, he can protect you no matter what, and that's the way I look at it. I just don't worry about it
It's by faith.
exactly. If you're a Christian, you don't really worry about it. I mean, yeah, you're worried, but you don't really worry about it.
If
You
you're a
don't
Christian,
worry
come back.
about your soul. You know, if you get killed in the middle of the war, whatever, but you don't worry about your soul. You can expect or hope that he would actually protect you, and everybody around you could die. You'd be the one to walk away, and that does happen in a lot of wars. And people have come back with stories where they were the last one, and they were praying. They were, they were the ones praying. So sure, that's the way I look at it. Yeah. Any other question? How much time we got?
None.
Okay. Any other questions?
None.
Well, that's as good as I can do in the time allotted.
When's the next
Kill
lesson?
the, well,